Can you imagine life without time? I used to think time was a straight line. Simple. We grow up, move forward, maybe learn a few lessons along the way, and that's it. Every birthday means progress. Is that right? But a few years ago, I began studying something ancient called Profections. Completely changed how I see time. At first, it sounded like another astrology technique. Then I started analyzing charts, some of the well known figures, some everyday souls. Today, I wanted to share with you a few examples where we review birth charts with the annual profections. Because whether famous or anonymous, we are all trying to make sense of our lifetiming. To start, the concept of profections first was used in the Hellenistic era, and it comes from the Latin word profectio, meaning departure, a going away, or setting out as well means advance. And each year and your birthday is when you enter into a new house profection year. And the planet that rules the house symbolically in your birth chart becomes your time lord or ruler for the year. It is the planet that guides us, that set the tone for what is emphasized in our lives. And we don't always write the script, right? Sometimes we feel like some years are different, and that's how a perfection year feels like sometimes. Let's start with the simple basics. And as I mentioned, it's a 2000 year time lord technique, and the questions remain timeless. Ancients didn't have the smartphones, the cars, microwaves, but they were just like us. They were still trying to understand relationships, family, or meaning in life. Some they were able to use perfections even monthly or daily. That was amazing. There are some important principles that I want to share with you here. And it's important to take those in consideration before we analyze the birth chart and its potential. First of all, we need to use the whole sign house system. And secondly, knowing the significations of the houses, it is key because when a specific house is being activated, we need to see what we will experience some way symbolically. And those topics are, like I mentioned, connect with the guided planet, and it all depends on the condition of the planet and which house is natally placed, that ruler. For that, we need to know what is sect like. We need to know aspects. We need knowledge of transits. And symbolically, the planet that is the ruler of the year, it is the one that will guide us during the year. And its transits are more relevant. That's what is great to know perfections, even if it is in a sign-based aspect. And this is why, because soon as the planet into the sign in real time in a perfected house, or the transits that is doing with other natal planets, then is activated. We're gonna use this diagram where we begin in the ascendant with the H0, and that's the first months of life, marking our first house profection year. It is, as I mentioned before, you are 1 year old, because then 1 year old birthday is when the second house is activated, and so on. For example, here, each year the houses advances in zodiacal order. For example, take a look, the 7th house. You were in a 7th house when you were 6 years of age, if you're a teen as well, and of course as well at 30, 42, 54, and 66. It is simple. It is an easy way to remember the cycle by just adding 12 years each time. Simple. Let's review our examples. What if you could have talent, fame, and sovereignty? Ella Fitzgerald, one is known as the First Lady of Song and the Queen of Jazz. She was American, born in 1917, and passed away in 1996. She has a remarkable career. Ella Fitzgerald, specifically today, let's briefly review 2 key years in her life, 2-year profections. And what happened? Well, before that, let's see, this is her chart. Leo rising, and the ascendant ruler is the sun. As you notice, is placed in Taurus, 10th house. It is a strong and visible position for the ruler of the ascendant, as well for Venus, because Venus was in Casimir with the sun, and Venus rules the 10th house. This highlights the radiant artistic aptitude that she has. And this is a diurnal chart because the sun is above horizon. Another important thing, it is that the most benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter, are enclosing the sun. That brings protection, success in the public life. And this house as well is relevant Mercury. And this is a great combination because through her remarkable career, Ella received 13 Grammy Awards. But there is one relevant. When she was 49 years of age, that means the second house profection year, the sign activated was Virgo. Then Mercury, placed in the 10th house, was the ruler for the year. Well, in March 1967, she became the first woman to receive the Grammy Lifetime Achievement, something truly unique. This is a beautiful reflection of Mercury and Taurus, symbol of voice, performance, and with Jupiter co-present in the 10th house, meaning of prestige, awards, honors, all topics correlated to the 10th house. Then, when she was 70 years of age, Ella entered to the 11th house profection year. The sign is Gemini. The ruler is again Mercury. And Gemini contains the moon. That means there is a mutual exaltation, mutual reception by exaltation, because Mercury is in Taurus, the moon is in Gemini. Well, in June 1987, she received the National Medal of Arts recognition from the United States President Ronald Reagan. And once again, Mercury as Time Lord activated the 10th house themes: recognition, public life, bringing her to the center stage of national honors. Amazing. Now let's transition with another example of someone connected to royalty as well. We're going to review the birth chart of Princess Grace Kelly. She was born in 1929 and passed away in 1982. When she was 25 years of age is when she won the Oscar for Best Actress. In her natal chart, Grace Kelly has a striking Scorpio stellium. You notice Mars is in Scorpio, domicile, the Sun as well, Mercury. And of course, the ascendant is in the first house. And this creates a powerful Scorpionic imprint. She was magnetic, charismatic, intense, and caring, always undeniable authority. Well, at age 25, that means she was in a second house profection year. Sagittarius is the house that has the second house, it's a sign. Well, Jupiter is the Time Lord, right? And as you notice, Jupiter is in Gemini, and the 8th house in Gemini. Well, even though Jupiter is an anti-domicile in Gemini, it still expresses through connection, communication, story, performance. I think this is an excellent signature for an actress, right? We can see the winning Academy Award. It fits this symbolism perfect because Jupiter is in a supportive trine to Venus and Libra. And we can say Venus, even though it's in the 12th house, it is great, it's in domicile. And this is a nocturnal chart. Then Venus is the most favorable planet according to Seclight, representing the beauty, the arts, and public appeal in her case. While Jupiter is expansion, honors, prestige, recognition, and together this combination describes that moment in her life. It's an elegant precision. The following year, she was 26 in a 3rd house profection year. The sign is Capricorn. And when you are in a Saturn ruling year, well, it was in 1956 when she married the Prince Rainier of Monaco. And that year, naturally, Saturn emphasized commitment, responsibility, and formal agreements such as like marriage, especially one that carries, the legal structure and the life reorganization from becoming, from being an actress to becoming a royalty. Another way of looking at Profections, friends, is when you advance from the luminary of sect. Grace Kelly's chart is considered nocturnal. Then the moon is the luminary object. The moon is in the fifth house in the sign Pisces. We perfect from the moon and find an extra layer to understand the tone for that year. She was in a third house from the ascendant, right? But when we advance from Pisces, then we learn that their house from Pisces is Taurus. It is the seventh house. In this case, partnership. And since Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is in domicile and its own sign, this points to a year when marriage and partnership, as well her social life, become the center of her story. All unfolding in 1956 in her life. Now, another example of marriage, anonymous, shared with her permission. When she was 15 years old, she didn't run away. Her parents actually agreed to her marriage. It might sound unusual, but in those days, it was more common for people to marry very young, especially with family support. Parents always were involved. And that happened during her fourth house profection year that activated themes of parents, family, private life. The ruler of the sign Gemini is Mercury, and you notice is exalted in the seventh house in Virgo. This is great. And seventh house is, like I mentioned, partnership and marriage. Well, that year marriage was official. And what is beautiful is that experience, the marriage wasn't just a moment, it became a long life story that lasts for many decades, all the way until her husband passed away. It is a good reminder that sometimes a perfection shows that there is roots of a long story that begins early in our lives, even when it feels unusual by today's standards. Here is another perfection story shared with permission. Anonymously, this person told me I was born premature with very low weight. I stay in the hospital in the neonatal care unit in the incubator for a while. Notice the rising sign is Aquarius. The ascendant ruler is Saturn. And during our first months of life, the perfection year is the first house. And Saturn is the ruler of the ascendant, right? The body, character, vitality. In this chart, friends, natal Saturn is in the sixth house, as well as anti-domicile. It is a Cadent house. It's not easy. It is retrograde. Well, what this person shared is that after those difficult first weeks, she slowly gained enough weight. Her brain developed normally, and she went on and have a completely healthy life. Well, in a way, it fits the Saturn symbolism. It is maturity that takes time, the early isolation in the incubator, delays is another thing, and delays before home was difficult for them. And the ruler of the ascendant, as I mentioned, always describes the vitality and body. And the sixth house sometimes is correlated to illnesses. In this case, it was no illness. However, it's something that required care, and she was in a hospital. Sometimes the 6 and the 12 are houses of places like that. At age 17, this person was in the sixth house profection year. As you can see, Mars is in Pisces. Well, Jupiter was the time lord, but sometimes a profection doesn't show what we do. It shows what life brings into our world, sometimes through the people we love. In this case, Jupiter, it is also ruler of the third house. And as you notice in Sagittarius, you find the moon. Well, that year was tied to sibling matters. With the moon in a square aspect to Mars and Pisces, also Mars overcoming Jupiter in Cancer, even though it's an exaltation, that year difficult circumstances become part of the story, even though they weren't her choice and no her fault. It was one of those years when life asks a lot from you, even if you didn't choose it. It is simple part of being human, right? As well, our charts are connected to the people we share our lives with. Profections show when we are asked to hold a space for what life brings through others. It is part of our existence, being touched by the joys and sorrows of the people we love. As I wrap up, friends, studying Profections has taught me something simple yet profound. Life's timing isn't always random. It is cyclical. It is alive. Each year, one part of our birth chart unfolds, asking to be noticed, to be lived more fully. Friends, life is fleeting, life is beautiful, and each moment is irreplaceable. Whatever life brings, trust your choices, believe in yourself, and meet each year with awareness, because that's how every moment becomes meaningful. Even if we go through loss, change, or pause, time continues to flow, and so do we. Or as Robert Frost, American poet, once said, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I learned about life. It goes on. Until next time.